All right, welcome in everyone to Great Lakes Rural Opioid Technical Assistance Regional Center training. This afternoon, we will be showing the last in our Youth Mental Health and Social Success series events. We have Ellen Merker back again, which is awesome. And she's going to be talking to us today about part 2 of her Digital Consent Rights for Youth with Disabilities series. I also want to take a moment to thank our Great Lakes ROTA-RC regional partner, UW-Madison Division of Extension, who is hosting both our session and our speaker today. I'm your host, Amanda Cura. I am the regional project manager, and I'm happy to be with you all today. Before we get into our session, we just need to talk about our funding acknowledgement and our funder. A reminder again that we are a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, funded project. We cover HHS Region 5, which includes Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. As part of our project, we provide virtual and/or on-demand education, evidence-based resources, and research, as well as technical outreach to professionals working in and with rural communities. You see our website link is up there. We're going to just show you a real brief posting of one of our websites. We encourage you to visit our website as often and as frequently as you can. I will post the website link as well as our email and some of our other items later on towards the end of our event. This particular page just shows you a little bit about what we have as far as the community toolkits and resources, videos and podcasts, supportive apps. This is constantly changing. We're working harder to make sure that you can get the resources directly on our website without having to follow a link rabbit hole. So please check it out. We also post our up and coming training events as well as regional training events throughout the Great Lakes area. Moving now, let's talk a little bit about how we want to show up in our session today. So as far as ROTA-RC, when we prepare to listen and engage in our session content on a regular basis, we move into working into a person-first language. Ellen is going to talk a little bit about how that differs when we work with the audience that she focuses on. In general, we want to create an environment of learning together. We want to feel welcoming and safe for everyone. And so as we work together to manage a space that supports non-stigmatizing, recovery-oriented language, we want to be able to just reduce that negative bias and promote engagement. So as always, we invite you to learn about successful prevention, treatment, and recovery from whatever space you're joining us from today. And we welcome you formally into the Great Lakes ROTA-RC community of learning. Before I welcome Ellen in, I'm going to quick throw up our poll. And then I'm going to, while you're doing that, I will do Ellen's introduction. Hold on. Okay. So you should be seeing, oops, there we go. You should be seeing a quick pre-poll. It'll help us kind of measure the impact of learning as part of our youth series. So I appreciate everyone taking a brief moment to fill that out. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. I will share the results. Okay. I guess it's a sense of just kind of how familiar everyone is with the topic area for today. I'll close the poll out. If it still stays in front of your face, just cross out at the top right-hand corner and then it'll disappear. So inviting our guest in today, if you were with us back in February, Ellen Merker was a phenomenal presenter in our Youth Mental Health and Social Success series. She's back again for part 2. Ellen has started her own consulting company back in 2017 called Heart Consulting LLC. And this was as a result of seeing the need for more resources around sexual assault and domestic violence within the neurodivergent community. Ellen received her MS in rehabilitation psychology from UW-Madison in 2012 and has worked in various roles with neurodivergent individuals for over 15 years. Ellen's therapy, education, and team consultation focus on individual needs and looking at how one's environment may be impacting mental health. She takes a neurodivergent, affirmative approach in all her work and works to build on strengths, supportive environments, and accommodation of needs. In addition to individual therapy, Ellen also has an extensive experience in speaking and training. She's presented at various conferences and organizations, including the National Project Search Conference, Wasteman Center's Community Outreach Wisconsin Training, the Wisconsin State Human Trafficking Conference, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, Wisconsin Reproductive Health Conference, Circles of Life, and Integral Autism Conference. I welcome now Ellen Merker as our presenter.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I'm so happy to be back here again. You already did a great introduction, so I don't really need to repeat all of that, especially since some of you may have been here for my first presentation as well. Just that note about language that Amanda had mentioned. So I had learned in grad school that it is always person first language, and in many situations that is the case. But as I got into the real world and hearing from the autistic community in particular, there are a lot of people who prefer identity first language. So I learned, a person with autism, a lot of autistic adults prefer autistic person. That's not everybody. I'm not speaking for everybody. If I'm ever working with somebody, I would ask them first. And some people prefer neurodivergent over autism. So I always ask how somebody prefers to be identified. However, just in general speaking, I usually use autistic person or neurodivergent person. Just wanted to make it clear that that is not me trying to be disrespectful or ignorant or anything like that. This is just what I have really heard a lot from the community. So if you were with us last time, our focus back in February around this topic was to better understand why behavioral approaches to helping teens and youth with online safety are not always the most effective, and how we need to build trust to build safety and build relationships where teens are feeling safe coming to us as grown-ups, as caregivers in whatever role that might be. And so today we're going to get a little bit more into what might really happen online, what might be driving teens and youth to connect with people online, what to look for, what to teach teens about online safety, and how to help teens kind of identify red flags, as well as some of the laws regarding sexuality and teens and online safety. So, and we touched on this last time too, that there are many benefits to meeting people online, right? There is a reason why people go online to connect. It's often easier access for a lot of neurodivergent people. There isn't a whole lot of safe opportunities to meet people in person. Or those activities might be this big bowling event that's super loud and it's a bunch of strangers. And I am personally not somebody who's going to go to a big event where I don't know anybody and just go up and start a conversation with a total stranger. That is a much more extroverted thing than I could ever do. And so, sometimes the opportunities just aren't there for meeting people in person, especially in rural areas. It's really, really a struggle. So some of the in-person gatherings can be overwhelming, and there could be a lot of anxiety around those social situations that a lot of neurodivergent people don't feel as much when they are talking to people online. And then also, when you are typing to somebody that you've met online, you can type out what you want to say, think about it, delete it, edit it, and then send it, right? In person, if you just say something, you have no filter, something just comes right out. You can't just erase that or take that back. And so that can cause a lot of anxiety for neurodivergent people who are worried about saying the wrong thing or worried about embarrassing themselves. And so they get really anxious and kind of avoid those situations or avoid talking and become really quiet to make sure that they don't say anything that, unintentionally is offensive or quote unquote weird or something like that, or embarrassing. And with meeting people online. Small talk is also something that's really hard for a lot of neurodivergent people. And sometimes if you're already in a group, like some sort of a Facebook book group or an online gaming group, you already know you've got something in common with them. It's easy, I've already got this topic that we can talk about. We can talk about the game that we're playing and things like that. And that can help people feel a little bit more comfortable in getting to know somebody online too. Of course, there are risks, and it's important for all kids and teens and adults to understand the risks. Kids and teens from marginalized groups are more likely to be exploited, harassed, and trafficked online. So that can include neurodivergent youth, youth with disabilities, foster kids, LGBTQIA, kids who have run away from home, immigrants, and children of color. They also kids who do not feel like they have safe and meaningful connections, like with parents or other trusted caregivers, tend to be at higher risk too. And this is because abusers and traffickers may really make kids and you think you can trust me, right? Your parents don't get you. Maybe it's a kid who is LGBTQIA and they do not have support of of their identity at home or at school or at church. And but there's this person online who says, "I accept you. I appreciate you. You're amazing. You can trust me. You can't trust your parents." So that can really be exploited, right? Like if teens are going online and venting about parents who aren't supportive and don't get them, that is something that abusers and traffickers can really like latch on to. Um, Kids and teens who haven't had any education about what to watch for online or just sex education and relationship education in general, that's a higher risk. And kids who don't have a trusted adult to talk to without judgment or fear of consequences. So again, this is something we talked about in that last session, that when kids and teens are used to just kind of always having consequences and having a phone taken away or something when they do something that they're not supposed to, what we see is teens sneaking around more and keeping more secrets, which makes them less safe because now not only are they still doing what they were doing before, but we don't know what's going on. And we can't provide guidance or support if we don't know what's happening. So again, in our last session, we had talked about neurodivergence and really understanding that and understanding the executive functions skills that can be more difficult for neurodivergent people. So this could be somebody with autism, ADHD, an intellectual or developmental disability, may struggle with some or all executive function skills. And we think about like, how do we connect? How do we form relationships, whether it's online or in person, really? Their executive functioning skills are necessary. So a big one is impulse control. I have worked with a lot of people who just message every person they see on a dating site, right? Or just immediately, like they've sent one message to somebody and they're immediately going to meet up with that person really, really fast. This can come from a lot of different places. For some, it might be ADHD and their dopamine level. So their brain is looking and craving for some stimulation. And that stimulation can come in the form of connecting with others. And so it's, messaging somebody over and over and over again, or, moving really, really fast into a relationship. Because that impulse control can be really difficult when you are craving some stimulation and some connection. It can be anxiety. So, when you're really anxious, what does he think of me? Does he like me? You might start messaging more or trying to connect more, doing more to try to impress somebody, get their attention. There might be that pressure to please and make somebody else happy that's driving some impulses too. Emotional regulation is another big one. So, I might, as a therapist, notice that one of my clients tends to reach out more online or engage in more risky dating behaviors online when they're lonely, when they're bored. things like that. But it's really hard for my client in those moments to stop and think, oh, why am I so motivated to go meet up with this person who I don't really know? Yeah, I'm feeling pretty lonely. None of my friends are available, and so that's what's really driving me. And so, making sure that there's that insight and awareness is really important. Remembering what you've learned. So I can do a lot of education, but again, sometimes in the moment, I'm not there all the time, and somebody's really struggling with impulse control and emotional regulation, and that's driving them more than whatever they talked to me about a week ago. Planning and prioritizing, thinking about consequences and the future can be really hard, and planning out your goals and how to be safe. Those are major skills necessary for being safe in any kinds of relationships and connection. And when we also think about the adolescent brain, adolescents, teenagers, they don't think about consequences the same way that adults do. Their brain just isn't developed, whether they are neurodivergent or neurotypical. And so we also have to kind of be taking that into account, that teens engage in riskier behavior than adults for a reason. They're more likely to drive faster or to experiment with drugs and alcohol, or engage in risky sexual practices, things like that. So it's a big reason why we see teenage pregnancies, although that's also partly because we don't have the education and the birth control and things like that. Um, but and there is, I don't have a link to this, but I'm happy to send it out to anybody who's interested. Dan Siegel has done a lot of research on the adolescent brain and has some really great videos on YouTube to help better understand kind of why teenagers act the way they do, and how we can, as adults, really change our approach to be more effective and more helpful. And then finally, self-monitoring is another skill that's necessary, noticing your body signals that might indicate something is unsafe. So this can be really hard, for a lot of neurodivergent people to notice that their heart is racing, notice that feeling in their gut, or they may be the opposite and like feel it way too much and it's really, really powerful. So the point of this is really, again, we don't want to just focus on eliminating behavior and telling people don't sex, don't look at porn, don't do online dating, don't talk to people online, and look at what's driving some of these behaviors and some of these desires to connect online, and what may be becoming a barrier to learning how to do this safely, because then we're just going to be better able to approach it and to teach and to share resources. So, the steps to connecting and to forming relationships are actually incredibly complicated, and again, take a lot of those executive function skills throughout this process. Um, I mean, the first thing really is people need to be educated. They need to understand consent, safe sex, setting and respecting boundaries, how to be assertive, how to be safe online, watching for red flags in person and online. Um, and these conversations are not like a one and done thing. It's not quote unquote the talk that we all think of, like parents have the sex talk that one time and then what, like teenagers just magically know everything for the rest of their lives. That's not how it works. It's an ongoing conversation. And we keep finding ways to bring it up naturally, to encourage people to ask questions and keep learning from their past experiences and things like that. We also need to help people really better clarify their goals and values when it comes to relationships, and when they are interested in like meeting people online. So are you looking to just do some gaming and you just want to talk to these people about gaming, and you're not interested in like forming a friendship outside of that? Or are you looking to find somebody that you could date or have a sexual relationship with? What kind of partner are you looking for? What kind of friend are you looking for? All these questions are really important to help people kind of think through, because it's going to help them in the long term, if a relationship's not going well, to reflect back and, oh, I was really looking for somebody, like I said, that who listens to my boundary and respects me, and they are really pressuring me. So like, that's not really fitting in with my goals. So I don't know if this is working for me. And it helps people, again, think critically. So it's not just us saying, you got to break up with that person. Asking questions, helping people kind of explore their goals and their values when it comes to relationships and connecting online, helps them to better be able to make these connections. And they're going to be more likely to remember those things down the road when they're making the connections themselves. Again, there's not a whole lot of opportunities for people to meet. So I want to be respectful that people might want to meet somebody online. That might be easier for them, or that might be feeling like their only option right now. And so we don't want to just shut that down. It takes a while to get to know each other. Meeting up requires transportation or help from family or staff. Most people don't really want their mom taking them on a date. But the impulsiveness can often make people want to jump into a relationship really, really quickly, particularly with somebody that they meet online. And so again, kind of trying to help teens and youth slow down and think about their goals and think about, if I rush into a relationship, how is that going to impact the relationship, right? Like I don't know anything about them. Like I might just be kind of setting myself up for a bad relationship here. How do I actually do this more effectively and efficiently? And we need to talk about breakups. Don't want that to come out of nowhere. We need to talk about, how do you know when it's time to break up with somebody? How do you deal with breakups? How do you deal with somebody who is, being harassing or abusive, whether it's online or in person? We need to think about how we as professionals or caregivers, teachers, whatever role we have, what would be your gut reaction if you hear that your teen, a teen that you really care about, is meeting somebody online? What's your gut reaction? How would you feel about that? You can feel free to shout him out or put it in the chat box.
This is a good question, Ellen. I have a teenager. Yeah, scared, the unknowns.
Scared, the unknowns. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Unsure, but wanting to ensure safety.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was like, first reaction was terrified. Oh.
Yeah. And it is. I'm a mom. Like, we as parents, but even as caregivers, whether it's our kid or not, we have this instinct to protect. And there are scary things and scary people on the internet, and so I am not dismissing that at all. But we want to be careful not to lead with that anxiety and not to let that anxiety drive how we respond. Because just like we're talking about how, loneliness, isolation, depression, anxiety can lead people to, engaging in some risky online behavior and connections, our anxiety, our fears can lead us to just sort of shutting down the conversation, taking away the phone, acting in ways or responding like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. What were you thinking? What kinds of, how do you think a teenager would respond to those kinds of reactions? How are teenagers going to respond if you're like super anxious and no, you can't do that. We're going to take the phone away.
I'm not sure if you can hear me very well.
They'll find a way.
Yep. Go ahead, we can hear you.
I was going to say the same thing. You can take a phone away, but there's so many devices that we can communicate through. And my gut feeling would be that's an opportunity for education. So again, teenagers are going to do it anyway, so yes, we might as well try to help them do it safely.
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron put in the chat, they will shut down,
that
keep
is
secret.
Good instinct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that was something we talked about last time too, is that the more we do the consequences and kind of that shutting this whole thing down, the more they sneak around, the more they keep secrets, and then the less they're gonna end up being. And so I want to validate the fear and acknowledge that that is there and it's totally understandable. And we kind of have to manage that and work with that and process through that and slow down our own reactions too. So that, because it's not about like who's right and who's wrong. It's not about, you might be very right that this person is engaging in something really unsafe, but it's not about being right or wrong. It's about what approach is going to be the most helpful to get them engaging more safely. And so online friendships can absolutely be real friendships. I've had plenty of clients who have friends, partners who they have never met in person. Some of which are very healthy, some of them are not. And so we need to balance that safety and that strive to protect, but also respecting the rights of teens and youth to explore relationships in a way that is most meaningful and practical for them. So not letting our anxiety and fears drive our decision making. It can drive a little bit. I am a proponent of, anxiety has a purpose. It it keeps us safe. It tells us when something is unsafe and not. But when it gets to a point where it is making you act in ways that go against your goals or your values, then it's becoming a problem. So where do we start with these conversations? Because there is so much information out there. There's so much that teens need to know. And I kind of want to just break that down into where do we start with this? So helping teens identify their relationship and friendship goals. What kind of friend or partner are you looking for? And what kind of friend or partner do you want to be? Because I've certainly worked with people who will identify like they really want to be respectful and supportive and caring.
Oh. Ellen, I think we've lost.
But then we see them, constantly has to stop or times matching up with your values. Did you lose me?
Yeah, we lost just your
Amanda,
audio.
can you hear me?
Your audio, I think, is
okay,
little slow.
back now?
Yep.
Okay, that's weird. All right, I'll just repeat what I just said then. Sorry. A really big truck had driven by like right around the time, so I wonder if that was why. I don't know. Okay, so I was just saying that we are guided by our values. And so if somebody is saying, I really want to be supportive and respectful and a caring partner, but then they're acting in ways like texting all the time or calling all the time and not respecting boundaries or privacy, going through their partner's phone, things like that. We come back and ask, well, are you living by your goals? Are you acting in ways that really show that you want to be this kind, caring, supportive person? Also, kind of just asking, like, how do I like to meet people? What works for me? Helping teens and youth kind of better understand their brains and like what kinds of social situations do I enjoy? What do I find calm and regulating, and what might cause anxiety, so that we can better understand, what works for each person. Teens and youth need to know, what should I be watching for? What should I expect in a healthy relationship? I know like nobody had conversations with me when I was in high school and going off to college about what to expect in healthy relationships. And my first boyfriend in college ended up being horrible and like really, it was unhealthy. I didn't even recognize that this was unhealthy. I just know like, I don't like this. I don't want to deal with it. And I realized later on, like, oh, those were definitely signs of like emotional abuse that could have escalated if I had stuck around. But I didn't know what to expect in a relationship. So I kind of just kept making excuses for it. And, oh, well, he's just had a hard day, or and there was a lot of gaslighting and things like that too. So we really need teens and youth to understand what to expect in a healthy relationship. That also means us as caregivers and professionals need to be modeling that. So when we've got a teen or a youth trying to say how they feel or trying to assert themselves, sometimes we have a tendency to dismiss that because we feel like we're in a hurry, we know better, like it's just faster if I just do this, things like that. And it's very unintentional. But what that does is normalize some unhealthy power and control dynamics. So if somebody just sort of gets used to somebody else always controlling the situation and telling them what to do, and not really listening to their feelings, like genuinely listening to and validating and reflecting those feelings, they're going to come to expect that in romantic relationships too. So talking about assertiveness skills and practicing that and modeling how to respond to somebody when they have set a boundary, and then making sure people know where they can go for help. If you are going to choose to meet people online, let's work on a safety plan. Let's talk about, if you do choose to meet up in person with somebody you've met online, how do we do that safely? And make sure your phone is charged. You need to meet in public. You cannot go do that by yourself. Things like I wouldn't say you cannot. It's more like working with them to come up with a plan. But you cannot do this is way too controlling, and they're going to reject that pretty quickly. So some important things, these conversations need to be non-judgmental and shaping. A word that I always try to avoid is why. So while we do want to understand somebody's motivations, that word why tends to make people really defensive. So, well, why did you send that image? Why did you meet up with that person? Why are you going online? This is not a safe site. Tends to make people feel really defensive and judged and shamed, and they're going to shut down, right? So questions that I would ask, and I have a slide on this later too, but kind of what were you thinking or feeling right before you went and met up with that person, or right before you sent that message, and trying to help people really think critically about, oh, okay, so I was like really lonely, like getting a little bit more reflection and insight into what was really going on for them, again, so that they can build those critical thinking skills for themselves. And then, trying to not make it feel like a lecture. I know for a lot of teens, everything feels like a lecture, especially if it's coming from a parent, even if the parent is saying the exact same thing I am. But one thing I've often talked to parents about is trying to use interests that people already have to bring up these conversations. So looking at whatever movies or TV shows that somebody likes, if there's romantic situations or sexual situations, don't just fast forward through it. Because I had a client who's an adult who would watch a movie, and he lived in an AFH with staffing all the time. And there was like a kissing or sex scene, and the staff grabbed the remote and fast forwarded through it. What do you think that teaches this adult about sex? Shame. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to avoid, is the shame. And sex is bad. Yeah. And, again, people with disabilities, neurodivergent teens and adults, they have the right to explore their sexual interests and their needs. And we need to be respectful of that while still, promoting safety and education. So the purpose is really to build trust, decrease the sneaking around, decrease teens and youth feeling like they have to hide things from parents or teachers or caregivers, and to, again, build some critical thinking skills. So I'm going to just kind of give you some information now on some strategies that I've used to help teens and youth and adults learn about online safety and consent. So I would start with being curious, not judging. So ask about what social media and other sites people like to use. What do you like about it? What do you use this one for? What do you use that one for? Um, Sometimes, like, I do not know every single site out there. And so somebody, like a teenager, will tell me, oh, I was on Spoon and I met this guy and I've never heard of that site before. So I just openly ask, oh, what do you use Spoon for? I haven't been on that one. Sometimes clients will even be willing to, like, show me theirs. And if they feel trusting, I never force or pressure them to show me anything with their social media. But just open curiosity to connect on this, right? Watch TikToks together, make a TikTok together. This link here is a site for making memes. So again, just kind of trying to show that you are not going to judge or shame them or like roll your eyes at these youngins' new technology and social media and stuff like that. And then having some ways to talk about this without telling people what to do or what's right and what's wrong sounds more like, oh, I know it's really exciting to meet someone new. I'd love to hear them more about them. Asking some open questions. Where are you hoping this relationship goes? What are you thinking about for the future? And that might be a little too deep. They're teenagers, relationships come and go pretty quickly. But what's it like to be in a relationship with this person? How do they make you feel? Is there anything that you would want to change? What's something you really like about them? We all have things that we might want to change about our partners, and that's okay. We don't, necessarily say, like, I want you to lose weight or things like that. But, that could bring up some, well, I wish that they would be a little bit more emotionally supportive, or I wish they would call a little bit more often, things like that. And then it kind of opens the door to having more conversations about that, and how to handle that and how to talk to your partner about that. When things are going south, what did that feel like for you? What was it like when they said that? How do you feel the best way to handle this is? And one that I use a lot, so this comes from self-compassion work, is if your best friend or someone you really cared about were in a relationship like this, or their partner said that to them, what would you suggest to them? Like, what advice would you give them? Because a lot of times, if I failed a test, I might be really, really hard on myself. Oh, I'm so stupid. I didn't study hard enough, things like that. If, however, my best friend failed the exact same test, I would never say those things to her. As somebody I really care about, I would say, hey, you'll get them next time. It's okay. We all have these, stumbles and things like that. And so really trying to work with people on thinking about, what would I say to somebody I care about, to somebody I love, and saying that to myself, right? Being compassionate towards yourself. And that can come up with relationships that, again, they might tell their best friend to break up with this guy. And it's like, oh, well, why might I say that to them? But then I'm sticking with this and making excuses. And again, it just kind of opens up this conversation to help people explore what's going on for them a little bit more, and think a little bit more about their needs, their goals, and what's working and what's not. So ways to teach about online safety, help teens in researching online sites, figure out what's okay and not okay to put on their profiles or send in messages, as well as, looking at other people's profiles and messages and determining what is and is not okay. And we'll get into those red flags a little bit more in a minute. Make sure that teens and youth know what rules there are on social media sites, right? You know, most of these social media sites, you cannot be posting or sending nude images, things like that, or racist or hate speech, things like that. So know the rules for each social media, know how to report harassment, how to set up privacy settings. Honestly, like sometimes it gets super confusing. Facebook, their account settings just keep getting more and more complicated. And so making sure you're going through there on a regular basis and just checking to ensure that it is set up to be private, that only people who you approve as friends are able to see your profile, things like that. So the most common online connection sites, any social media really, you know, people meet each other on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, everything. Gaming sites are really, really common with a lot of teenagers and young adults. So Discord is a big one, and Minecraft, and then Roblox is more meant for younger kids. I have heard, like, I don't know a ton about Roblox. I have heard from others that there are adults who get on there and you know, act as kids and get on there to exploit children. So just because it's made for younger kids does not mean that it's totally safe, but it also doesn't mean don't use it at all. Educate and help kids. You know, if they're younger kids, I would be monitoring it a little bit more closely, just because they may not have the skills at, you know, when they're 7 years old to manage online connection safely, like completely independently. And then for ages 18 and up, there's a million different dating sites out there. Some of the more common ones right now are Hinge, Tinder, and Bumble, but there's a lot more out there too. And again, those are supposed to be for 18 and up only, but certainly, you know, the free websites, there may be some that are known for not doing great, like ID checks. I don't know how many of them like require you to scan in your ID or something to prove that you are in fact the age that you say you are. So there could be teenagers who just lie about their age on there. So it's important to be careful with that and to understand, to like make sure teenagers understand the laws around consent and the age of consent, that if you are under the age of 18, you cannot have sexual contact with somebody who is over the age of 18. Technically, legally, so this depends on the state that you're in. But in Wisconsin, where I'm at, nobody under the age of 18 is legally allowed to have sex. I don't know that it's enforced a lot. But even, you know, a 16-year-old with another 16-year-old, technically illegal. It doesn't really get reported a lot, but unless it was non-consensual. But there are some states that have what are called Romeo and Juliet laws. And so those are laws that say it is okay for minors to have sex with other minors if they are within a certain age range and above a certain age. So like a 16-year-old could have sex with a 15-year-old, but not with a 12-year-old. And there's like specific like ages and ranges and things like that. It depends on the state. Even sometimes, you know, an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old can. Sometimes we see that with, you know, seniors in high school, and one turns 18 like a month or two before the partner. Wisconsin does not have any Romeo and Juliet laws, but you can look up for your state if the laws are different there. So there are some lesser known sites that might be a little bit safer, specifically for neurodivergent adults or adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So Hikey is one. It's an online dating and friendship site for adults with autism. It is like made by autistic adults for autistic adults. I have used it myself. I've gone on there just to kind of explore it to see if it was something I would recommend. I think overall it was good. The one issue was there weren't a ton of people on it. So I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. There was like one person in my area, and it wasn't even in Madison. It was in another nearby city. There were a couple in Milwaukee. But I keep bringing it up because I figure if I promote it and get more awareness, maybe some more people will join and that can change. And then Hello, It's Me is another one that also, so this one is not free. There's a monthly subscription fee, but it includes online relationship coaching and online dating, and has like educational modules, and people can create like a group or like a virtual party. So if somebody wants to create a virtual get together for people to talk about a certain topic, or to do like a virtual dance party, things like that. So it's got some perks on it. I'm assuming it's only for adults. I couldn't find anything on their website that specifically said that though. And I never got a subscription. It's not free. So I didn't go in to see like how many people are using it. So people also need to know about red flags, but what is really important, I've got a list here of some examples, but it's important to be clear, this is not an all-inclusive list, right? I cannot possibly predict every creepy, cringy, gross, inappropriate, unsafe thing that somebody on the internet could do or say. And so I don't want anyone to be like, well, this thing that they said or did wasn't on like the list that Helen gave me, so maybe it's okay. So it's really important to help people kind of start to recognize that gut feeling, which can be, again, really hard for neurodivergent people to notice if their heart is racing or they're getting the butterflies in the stomach. But it's really important to recognize, to understand that whatever it is that somebody says or does, if it just in any way makes me feel uncomfortable, I can get out of there. Like I might not even understand why I feel uncomfortable. I might not know exactly right now. I haven't processed it yet, but I can always end that relationship or leave or get somewhere safe if for any reason I'm feeling that yucky feeling. So some examples might be asking for money. I always say, like, if anybody asks you for money online, that's probably a scam. And I have had lots of clients who have been scammed out of money online. That's actually something I didn't really put in, is there are a lot of like scams. I mean, when I use Facebook Marketplace, if I'm selling something on there, I can't tell you how many times somebody has tried to scam me on there by claiming, oh, like, I'm not available, but my sister can come pick it up, but she doesn't have cash. So can she just Venmo you? And it's nope. I noticed that as a red flag, but not everybody would if they're not used to that. Because it seems like totally reasonable and everything. And it's not out of the question to want to use Venmo, but I know not to trust strangers on the internet with my financial information. So asking for or sending sexual images, asking really personal questions, any sense of pressure to do anything, and using any kind of aggressive, racist, sexist, or homophobic language. So this could be something that you're noticing in somebody's profile, in somebody's messages. If you are friends with, or you met them on a dating site, maybe you go and try to see if they have a Facebook page or an Instagram page and compare there and like see all their social media, and are they kind of, being the same person and across the board. I do often, I'll talk to people about using CCAP as a way to, somebody had an example that happened. An individual scammer friend tries to convince person to buy game, send code. Yep. So there's a ton of scams. Generally, I would try to teach people that, hey, if somebody you don't know, like really know, like them in person, you're friends with them, anybody asks you for any money or any like financial information, just don't respond and wait until you can talk to like a trusted support person or adult to kind of figure out if that is scammy or not. Because lots of people, adults without developmental disabilities, fall for these scams all the time too. It definitely happens. My grandma got scammed out of like $2,000. It happens. These scammers know what they're doing. They know how to manipulate. And so again, just trying to reiterate that caution. and not rushing things. I think that's one of the biggest struggles is people feel like they need to respond right away or somebody's going to get upset with them, right? Like, and it might be a perceived pressure or a pressure that that person is actually like, hey, I really need this money now. You have to decide now. A lot of scammers will do that. Will try to pressure somebody. That's a big red flag. Like I said, any kind of pressure to do anything is a pretty big red flag. So really just trying to work with people on slowing down, and how slowing down is going to actually help them meet their needs and their goals, right? People might feel like they need to rush into a relationship because they need that connection now and they really, really want a boyfriend and that's really, really important to them. And so they're going to reply or do whatever the person wants. But if we slow down and talk about it, a quality relationship takes time, and you deserve a quality relationship. You have these things that you're looking for. Really trying to work, and that might take also work with a therapist to address like the root cause of some of that impulsive behavior. That could be trauma related too. So making sure that we're also addressing kind of what is driving the impulsivity. So this is a way that I often teach, particularly when I do groups, is I actually have found some interesting profiles and messages out there. And in case you can't read it, this first one with a young woman says, I love people who love to buy gifts. It shows you care. And I mainly like Black guys or mixed people. Gotta be sexy though. I'm really good at sex, LOL. The most private thing I'm willing to admit, LOL, I'm so desperate for someone to buy me an iPhone 5 or iPod Touch 5th gen for Christmas. You should message me if you'd be willing to get me the iPhone 5 or iPod Touch 5th gen. I'm a student in 11th grade. So then I would ask the group, and I'm going to put this out there to you all, anything you found fishy or odd or red flaggy in that profile?
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah, all of it. Asking them to buy something. Yeah, it kind of doesn't sound like she's looking for a boyfriend so much as somebody to just buy her something very expensive. And so, yeah, that's basically asking the same thing as asking for money. The other part that I bring up, like she's bringing up sex right away, like right on her profile. And the very last one, I'm a student in 11th grade. Probably means she's not 18. Probably, lied about her birthday for this, whatever site this is. So that's a big red flag, is somebody still in high school. This next one, this guy drinking a beer, it says, I'm really good at writing Full House / fic erotica. The most private thing I'm willing to admit, I'm so sick of being friend zoned. Ladies, if you're looking for a real man who will value you for your heart and not your body, your knight in shining armor awaits. No fatties, please. Any thoughts on that one? Sometimes I just flat out ask, would you message this guy? Would you want to date this guy? And why or why not?
Also, he's drinking alcohol in the photo.
Yeah, pretty like immature.
Mm-hmm. Brenda had put testing the water by bringing up the erotica.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, that they're testing, seeing how you respond to that. Something I often try to point out is, this I'm so sick of being friend zoned. If you're looking for a real man who will value you for your heart and not your body, your knight in shining armor awaits. Um, that by like, some people might immediately see that as positive. But yeah, and Marcela just said, but then he says, but he doesn't want fatties. Even without that, I'm so sick of being friend zoned. I'll have conversations about like, well, what are they really meaning by that? Like they're whining and complaining about past relationships, or this expectation that women owe them something more than friendship. And why is that concerning behavior or concerning attitude? But yeah, then the no fatties please actually makes him sound incredibly shallow, and which is the opposite of that previous sentence. So yeah, very like conflicting profile. So yeah, that's a hard pass for me. And part of this is, I try to use humor. His picture does not match what he's offering. That's also correct. Yeah. So when talking about these topics, people can be really shy and reserved and not really want to open up. So I often try to use some humor, not to like minimize it, but when I say, "Oh, that's a hard pass for me," things like that, get people kind of laughing and feeling a little bit more relaxed. I also will often use some personal disclosure. Like I've done online dating before and had some really interesting messages, and so I'll be open and share that. And again, I think that shows people that you can relate to them, that you're not going to judge or shame them for wanting to meet people online, because like I've done the same thing, and makes them a little bit more willing to open up and to ask questions and to share like, oh yeah, well this guy said this to me, like what do you think of that? Helps us to get a conversation going. And then we also need to watch for red flags in the messages, right? So this first one over here is just one person messaging, "Can I call? I mean, when you're free, obviously. Okay, can you just let me know it's you and you're getting these texts? Seriously, what's wrong? Okay, look, I'm really sorry if I said something that upset you, but now you're just being really mean, ignoring me." So my question usually is, would you respond? And why not? Controlling. Yeah. It's that like pretty impulsive behavior that, and not respecting boundaries. Like if somebody doesn't respond, that is them trying to send a signal that they're not interested. And this can be actually really hard for a lot of the people I work with. Is a lot of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities might actually do this themselves and send a bunch of messages and get really frustrated and upset when somebody doesn't respond. And so I also have to talk to them about respecting boundaries. You send one message, and if they don't respond, you don't send another one. And certainly there are times when people just like miss texts and stuff, but chances are it's more likely that if they really were interested in wanting to respond, that they would have. So yeah, having those conversations can be difficult. I know rejection is very hard, but again, that's why we need to talk about respecting others' boundaries too, and dealing with rejection. This next message is, "You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen that is around my age. You're so sexy and you have a very cute smile. If you wanted to, you could be a model. I'm not even joking. You're that hot. You're just plain drop dead gorgeous." Any thoughts on this one? I should say, would you respond? this one, it tends to be a little tough for some of the people I work with, or like in some of the groups that I've run. The match says 0%. Yeah. So good catch. You're not just looking at the message, you're looking at everything.
It seems really physically fixated instead of talking about anything else as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people's instinct might be like, oh, wow, he really likes me. Like, he really finds me attractive. That feels good. Like, it feels good to be complimented. And so it might be tempting to respond to this person because, again, a lot of neurodivergent teens and youth and adults and people with developmental disabilities haven't gotten that kind of praise, haven't gotten that kind of attention before. And it can be really exciting. So also, kind of considering what feelings might drive you to jump into a relationship. It feels like baiting. Yeah. And everybody wants compliments. It's pretty superficial. Exactly. But again, that might be a hard one. Like a lot of people that I've worked with would say, oh yeah, he really likes me. Well, do you think he read your profile at all? Like he or she, it's Johnny. Okay. Has a 0% match and is sending this message. Chances are they didn't even look at their profile. So how do they know if they like you, right? Like they're pretty just focused on your picture. Another one, you are the hottest girl I've matched with today, and I've matched with 100 girls. So technically you're in the 1%. Ironically, you're also in the 99% too, because 99% of girls are missing out on a great opportunity with me. So again, very focused on looks and also really pretty arrogant. And then the last one was, how are you doing? So do you like guys with big, it says musicals. I believe he meant muscles. Would you respond? Yep, leading up to sex talk. Yeah, again, focused on physical attributes. One thing that I think it's important to note is not just looking at like what not to put in messages or what to watch out for messages, but also what should you expect in a good message. You should expect like a good message is going to contain them making some sort of a connection with you, like that showing that they looked at your profile and that you have something in common. Oh, you're a Green Bay Packers fan. Me too. Did you watch the game on Sunday or things like that? Anything that shows that they're putting a little bit more effort in, that they're reading your profile. And again, so this is really just for adults, more like dating sites. But things like this can happen on Discord and gaming sites and any site beyond dating. So even if you're not working with adults who are 18 and older and can be on these dating sites, it's still something that's important to learn because you can message random people and strangers on Discord, gaming sites, Spoon, Facebook, Instagram, everything. So I want to talk about sexting. This is one that a lot of people are really, really nervous about, and understandably so. In terms of the law, so this is specific to Wisconsin. So I can't speak to, if people are in other states, but in Wisconsin, any minor who sends a nude image of, whether it's of themselves or another minor, to anyone else, whether that's a minor or an adult, can be charged with distributing child pornography. And any minor or adult who receives nude images of a minor can be charged with possession of child pornography. So we really need to make sure that teenagers understand these laws. And, when it comes to consent with sexting. So what's driving the decision to sext? Is there peer pressure, whether it's from your partner or from friends? Is it this kind of desire to feel like an adult? Is it really exciting? You know that your friends are doing it. The peer pressure is really key here. We need teenagers to understand what consent is. So consent is more than just a yes or an absence of a no. It is enthusiastic. It's specific. So like, just because you consent to sex or to kissing doesn't mean that you have to consent to sex. And it is not pressured or coerced. So if your partner asks you to send some nude photos and you say no, or I'm not really sure, that's not consent. If they start pressuring you, oh, come on, just one, like just, the top half or something like that, and really start pushing it, and finally, eventually you say yes, that's not consent. Consent cannot be pressured or manipulated or forced out of somebody. So really important to kind of help teens understand what pressure looks and sounds like. It could be quid pro quo. So, oh, if you send me a naked picture, I'll do your homework. Or, at work, if you send me a nude photo, I'll give you a raise. That's not consent, even if you do end up saying yes to it. It can look like ultimatums. You send me a nude photo or I'm going to break up with you. Send me a nude photo or I'm going to out you if somebody's LGBTQ and hasn't come out yet. Or it could just be, oh, come on, don't you trust me? Anything that's manipulative like that is not consensual sexting. So, or touch or whatever is happening between them. So really important that teens and youth understand consent is not just for sexual touch. It is also about, sharing personal information. It's about sexting. It's about showing you something that's sexual. I once knew a guy who just flashed a nude photo of a woman that he had taken right in my face. I did not consent to seeing that. I was really bothered by it. Stopped hanging out with him because he was creepy. Friend of my roommates, that it was a weird situation. And then it's important to talk about cyber sexual abuse too. So cyber sexual abuse, more commonly referred to as revenge porn. And I have a video that I'll try to, let's see if, there, yes, the link did work. I'm gonna share this tab instead. Just want to make sure. Can you guys hear the video as I was just playing?
Nope.
Okay, let me try again.
21-year-old living in New York.
Can you hear it?
She recently ended a relationship with her boyfriend. Her ex, disgruntled, decided to take naked and vulnerable pictures of her and other videos and expose them on the World Wide Web for everybody to see, also including social media. Well, the post went viral, causing Laura to feel embarrassed, ashamed, and even scared. In an effort to escape the embarrassment, she ultimately had to quit her job and leave the state. This happens all too often to men and women all across the country. This is called cybersexual abuse, more commonly known as revenge porn, and it's a huge problem. I'm Ebony K. Williams. I'm a lawyer, journalist, and longtime advocate for domestic abuse survivors. Today we're going to explain the rights of revenge porn victims, and in doing so, draw on the insights of Talks on Law and an incredible group of public interest and pro bono attorneys. So first off, what is cybersexual abuse? Well, again, it's commonly referred to as revenge porn, but it's important to know that anytime sexual graphic images are shared without someone's consent, that's abuse. And the issue with calling it revenge porn is sometimes it implies that the person did something wrong to anger or incite revenge, when in fact, that's not true. It's simply abuse. So cybersexual abuse can include real or even fake photos or video images of the victim. Cybersexual abuse can also include the abuser sharing real or even made up details about the victim's sexual history and sex life. So that's how we define revenge porn. Now let's talk about the legal remedies and tools to help the victims. So state laws can vary widely. Some criminal remedies can include harassment, non-consensual pornography laws, and invasion of privacy. And these remedies can range from misdemeanors to felonies. So California was one of the first states to have laws around this. In 2013, they banned unconsensual pornography, which requires that an image of sexual explicit nature be sent without the person's consent and that it likely causes emotional distress. Someone convicted of this faces a misdemeanor charge and faces up to a $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail. In New York, there was no revenge porn law.
So I'm gonna just flip back to the presentation because now she kind of goes into laws and states that I don't think anyone in this group are in. But so yeah, she makes a really good point here that revenge porn is the most common terminology that we hear for that. But it's so important that if somebody has been the victim, that we are not blaming them. So not coming off as, saying things like, well, why did you send that sexual image to begin with? Why did you even take that picture? That's victim blaming. It's incredibly shaming. It is going to impact that victim's mental health. I mean, their mental health has probably already been impacted significantly. This is incredibly traumatic to have sexual images, put all over the internet, whether they are real or fake with all this AI, technology going on now. So it's important that people understand, you could be in a trusting relationship and consent to sending sexual images back and forth. But what happens when you break up with that person and they're upset and angry? Not that it, again, is in any way the victim's fault, but there is a risk, right? And so it's just important that people understand risks associated with this. It's going to be their decision, but there are legal risks and there are privacy risks. And so again, even if we have that conversation and they still send a sexual image and it ends up on the internet, we still are not going to want to blame or shame them for that because they consented to sending it to that person. That does not mean that they consented to having it posted or shared to a bunch of other people. And I had a client who, this wasn't them, but their brother was 18 and had a girlfriend who was 17, and the 17-year-old girlfriend sent him a sexual nude image. It was consensual, although he's 18 and she's 17. And then he was high on drugs one night and sent it on to some friend, and he ended up getting arrested for that because he was charged with child or distributing child pornography. My guess is the 17-year-old or maybe a parent found out about that and reported it. So very real consequences. People need to really, really understand laws around this. And porn in the law. So, it's technically illegal for minors to be possessing, watching pornography. Any porn site you see requires you to enter in your birth date and so that they know that you're 18 and older. But at the same time, we know teenagers are accessing it, so we need to still have conversations about how to do so safely. So, talking about when and where is watching porn or masturbating acceptable. The privacy of your own home in your bedroom with the door closed only, right? I'm really clear with people that anything that might seem private, but somebody could walk in or could easily overhear is not private. So a bathroom stall in the mall bathroom, technically nobody can see you, but that is still not a private space because there are other people coming and going and can overhear. Your living room, if you have a shared living room with family or a roommate, that is not a private area because somebody could walk in at any time. And so, making sure you cannot be watching pornography on your phone on the bus or in the cab rides to work, anything like that, that is going to get the police called, right? Because like the person sitting next to you is not consenting to having to see that or overhear that, and can make other people feel extremely uncomfortable or unsafe. I talk all the time about what is missing from porn. So I know that when they film a pornographic video, that there's consent happening behind the scenes, right? Like these actors are signing consent forms saying, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. This is how we're going to, be safe and protection and things like that. But you don't see any of that in the actual video, right? It's just somebody's delivering a pizza and then all of a sudden, oh, I don't have any money and I'm going to take my clothes off and pay with sex. One, there was no consent there really. Two, we aren't seeing condoms being used or protection being used. And three, really unrealistic sexual scenarios. And that's something that's incredibly important for teens to understand, because if a teenager's only real experience so far with sex is to watch those kinds of videos, they may come to expect that in their first sexual experiences. And, it could be incredibly dangerous if they are not asking for consent, because they see it as romantic or like normal in this movie that the guy just grabs the woman, things like that. And so porn is not sex education. It is really important to understand for teens and youth. There can also be some fetishes in porn that the vast majority of people are not interested in or would make them really uncomfortable. So again, it's coming back to that conversation about consent, and understanding most people might find that uncomfortable or odd, and you have to ask. You have to ask before any touch. And then, it's also illegal to share with other minors. I worked with a teen once who was 12 years old, and he showed porn to like 8-year-old and 7-year-old like siblings and a cousin. And he was removed from the home. And what it turned out to be was he had been shown porn at a very young age by an adult. And so he just thought that was normal, right? He didn't understand that that's not appropriate or safe. And when we started having conversations with him about this, he got it, right? Like nobody had ever talked to him about it. And he had been abused in that way by being shown pornography by an adult at a young age. That it was not surprising that he would have that reaction. But when we had conversations about it, he felt terrible. There was, he felt very much ashamed, and we had to work through that quite a bit. But he understood like the concept of consent. It goes to show what just having open, honest, non-judgmental conversations can really do to improve somebody's safety in a situation like that. And I have another, let's see. So on my resource page, on the last page of this, I share the website for this YouTube channel called Amaze. They have a ton of, you can like see them over to the side probably on here. Lots and lots of videos on relationships and sexuality and puberty and safety that are geared towards tweens and teens. So just to show an example of one that's specifically about porn.
Oh, wow, that's so big. I never knew it could be so huge. Hey, Jane, what are you looking at? Oh my gosh, you have to come here and see this. It's pictures of yesterday's winner of the school's annual vegetable growing contest. Sometimes when you are on the internet, you might accidentally or intentionally end up on a website that features pornography, sometimes called porn. Being curious about sex and looking at pictures or films of naked bodies or people engaging in sexual behaviors is perfectly normal. But you have to remember that porn contains some misleading messages, like bigger is better when it comes to breasts, penises, or the duration of sex. Pornography often shows women as only existing to give men pleasure. Lastly, porn might make you think that being sexual with another person has nothing to do with having an intimate, trustful, or respectful relationship. Pornography can also contain violent images or strange-looking behavior that may be scary or disturbing. Don't forget, porn is like many movies. It's completely made up, a fantasy that could never exist in real life and does not show realistic, healthy, intimate, or loving sexual relationships between two equal partners. I wonder how long the longest cucumber in the world is. Hey, that's not a cucumber. Okay, guys, so if you do come across something on the internet that makes you feel uncomfortable or confused, talk to an adult you trust. Till next time, and don't forget to come and visit me at amaze.org.
So one thing I will also point out, this is not something I would share with minors because, again, that would not be legal. But there are websites out there that do have porn that shows consent and protection and are much more realistic portrayals. And so typically, if you look up feminist porn, those tend to be more realistic. Obviously, do not ever share that. I don't even bring it up with a minor. Like it's totally not appropriate or legal. But you know, for adults, if I've got an adult who is interested in masturbation and porn, we can talk about that and talk about safe ways to explore that, because people have sexual needs and they have the right to explore that. And I'm not going to withhold information, you know, or make them feel ashamed of that in any way. Share this tab. Okay. So it's important to also understand human trafficking and signs of that. I did a presentation for the Wisconsin State Human Trafficking Conference. And when I told people what I was presenting on, that I was presenting on trafficking of people with developmental disabilities, a lot of people were really shocked. Like, oh no, people would never do that to somebody with a developmental disability. I think actually the bigger shock is people assuming that there is no like market for having sex with somebody with a developmental disability. And that's not the case. People, neurodivergent youth and adults are at higher risk of being trafficked. This kind of goes back to a lot of what we talked about before. You know, traffickers really groom people by, you know, oh, you can trust me and nobody understands you like I do. And really trying to build that relationship and build that trust in an incredibly manipulative way. And so for somebody who's neurodivergent, who maybe isn't used to getting attention or used to getting praise or used to being liked as much, that can be extremely rewarding and extremely motivating. And so that is something that puts them at higher risk, not because of something that's just inherent in autism or a developmental disability, but because of our culture and our society and how we have historically treated these communities. So signs of grooming to watch for: unexplained increases in money. A lot of times these traffickers will give money or gifts to people. I don't know that this was a trafficking situation, but I've had a teenager who met somebody online. I don't know what site. I'm pretty sure it was an adult. And he started sending them gifts. At first, it was like a blue sweatshirt and something else that I can't remember. And then all of a sudden, mom opened a package from this guy, and it was a box of knives. And so, you know, again, not that this was becoming a trafficking situation, but the fact that he was sending any gifts at all was a pretty big red flag. He lived in a whole nother state. And then the knives, my guess was this client has struggled with cutting and probably told him, oh, my parents hid all the knives and I'm feeling depressed and things like that. And this guy is, oh, I got you. I understand you. I don't know if that's what actually happened. My client said that they didn't know why they sent and didn't know why that these knives were coming. But it's something that very glad that mom found and was the one to open it. And the trick is, my client really didn't know much about this person. They were in another state and all we had was the first name. So the mom called the police and reported it, but there wasn't much that could be done for investigating without more information. Being told, don't tell anyone about us. Don't tell anyone about me. Your parents won't understand. This is our little secret. Anything that's encouraging that secret keeping, teens and youth need to know, like that's a pretty big red flag as well. Any testing of boundaries. So asking to send, a picture of cleavage. It's not a nude. It's not, I'm not asking for a fully naked picture, just a little cleavage, things like that. Testing those boundaries. And then any kind of intimidation, ultimatums. If you don't send me a nude photo, then, I'm gonna break up with you or I'll stop talking to you. Again, that quid pro quo as well. So those are some signs. I believe on my website, you can also find, I'm pretty sure I put the grooming handout on there. And so it kind of goes into more detail about what grooming looks and sounds like and some signs to watch for that we should be teaching youth. So moving forward, kind of to summarize, is we really want to focus on joining with teens, teaching critical thinking skills and providing resources. Make sure people understand the law, understand risks, potential risks. I certainly don't want somebody to learn things the hard way. And so just trying to make sure people get all the information they can and then having ongoing conversations, making them that really judgment-free, shame-free conversation. So when we dismiss needs and values, we see the sneaking around, less safe situations, a lot of shame associated with dating and sex leads to more secrecy. Making assumptions about someone's goals can lead us to miss necessary education and resource sharing. So if we assume, this person is antisocial, they don't want to have friends. I've seen that in a teenager's report once, and I was just like, no, he is not antisocial. He's just like, he wants friends so bad. He's just not going about it in the same way that his peers are. But when we put that label on there, that was like in an official report by a social worker. That is, telling any new staff who reads that not to bother trying to set up social things, not to bother with that. And we're totally missing out on, some of his goals and values. And or, assuming that because somebody has a developmental disability or is autistic that they're not interested in sex leads us to not provide information and resources on those topics and, decreases safety. So, and then when something does become unsafe, they may not feel like they have anyone that they can trust to talk to. They may not feel like they can report something if they're worried that their phone's going to be taken away, or there's going to be some consequence. And then again, the increased control and behavioral punishment tends to lead to more anxiety and more depression, and more sneaking around and more rebelling. So help people identify their goals and values, help them identify safe places and opportunities to meet others that might be online, that might be in person. So talk about the benefits and risks and how they'll know if something is unsafe and what to do, what resources they have. In some cases, we need to advocate for more funding. I work with a lot of people with long-term care funding in Wisconsin that's called IRIS or family care for adults. And a lot of times there is no funding for transportation except if it's for work or medical appointments. And so people are just going to work and going back home. They don't meet anybody else. And so they might start flirting or asking out coworkers because that's the only opportunity they have to meet people. Just like if the internet is the only opportunity to meet people, that's what people are going to do. We're social creatures and we want connection, and autistic people are no different. And model healthy relationships. Ask for consent before even hugs. I do this with my to almost 3-year-old. We've been working on consent. We've read kids' books about it. We've talked about, asking before tickles and things like that. And my parents were watching my kid, and they told me that my education is working because my dad started tickling my kid, and my kid stood up and said, "No, you have to ask before that touch." So I was really excited about that. Good for him. Setting some boundaries as a 2.5-year-old. But it just goes to show, having these conversations, people can learn. So don't just, I know I've had client referrals where a parent has just assumed, don't talk to them about consent because they're not going to get it. I just want you to talk to them about the way that they dress and how that might seem to others, like invite, certain people to touch them or things like that. And I had to set some boundaries and say, no, like we talk about consent with everybody, and, blaming the way somebody's dressing on potential sexual assault is victim blaming, and explain the reasons why we don't do that. And because this guardian really was insistent that that's what we had to do and that we couldn't talk about consent, we had to decline that referral, because I'm not going to compromise my values and my ethics in that way. But certainly there are, a lot of parents and caregivers who don't want to have these conversations, and it's uncomfortable and it's hard. But again, reflecting on our own values and our own goals, and understanding that these conversations are actually what make people safer. And I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. So, and I've got a few resources on here. The cyber sexual abuse laws by state, that is a website where you can look up your state and what the sexual abuse laws are, cyber sexual abuse laws. There's a couple of resources for internet safety, online safety, a couple of books here. One is Sexting Panic, and then Boyfriends and Girlfriends. There's lots of books, a couple other books by Terry Cohenhoven, who is from Milwaukee. And then the Amaze YouTube channel. I showed you an example, but they've got a whole lot of other ones as well. So I want to open it up to questions and discussion now.
Feel free to unmute and ask questions directly, or you can type it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and end recording as well.